Captain CNI transponder. No Covenant defenses detected.
What? There's no Covenant here? You think maybe nobody's home? Oh, whoa! Contact! Lots of contact! Now what?
No, I'm getting old because I vividly remember a time when Halo was the king of FPS games. If you owned an Xbox, you probably owned Halo, and that's because for the longest time, it was the reason to get the damn thing. The Halo series throughout the 2000s is to Microsoft what goddamn Mario was to Nintendo throughout the 90s. It not only held down the brand, but was revolutionary in pushing a genre forward. On that first point, it was so popular and lucrative that it spawned a whole genre of Halo killers designed to take its crown. And I always say, when you have legions of imitators, then you gotta be doing something effective. The declining quality of the Halo series over the years isn't the sole reason for people not giving a fuck about Xbox anymore, but it's definitely a big one. The mascot sucking shit can only hurt things. Like, imagine if Nintendo released a new console and the Mario and Zelda games on it were not only mid, but could be found on PC. You would be like, okay, well, there goes half of the reason I got the damn thing. Should have just invested in a PC instead. Well, that's kind of where a lot of people, including myself, are at with Xbox, and some of that definitely has to do with 343 Industries not knowing what to do with the Halo series. Far cry from when Bungie was handling things, but then again, the series was new and fresh at the time. It's been regurgitated a million times, but yeah, the first game back in 01 was the benchmark for first-person shooters for many years. It popularized mad shit that would become commonplace in the genre moving forward. Regenerative health, console controls that aren't garbage, split screen co-op, only holding 2 weapons at a time, and an online PvP mode that would become just as important as the offline shit. Unfortunately, with this being an old ass game, the PvP is dead as hell, so I will not be talking about it in this video. Shit, even if it were still active, it's not like you can recapture the magic felt back then. The online fun you can have with this game and all the other Halos is one of those you had to be there moments. With that being said, the campaign for these games are still better than most games, especially with the first game here where most people weren't even online yet. There was more pressure for it to stand as a single player game, and boy did it. There's a lot of culture stemming from this game, but I'm more interested to see if it still holds up as a game. But before we get into that, what the hell was the first Halo even about?
14th Platoon rendezvous with 22nd Tactical at Bulkhead Charlie 14.
You heard the lady. Move like you got a purpose.
This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill.
Once again, it is our job to finish what the flyboys started. We are leaving this ship platoon and engaging the Covenant on solid ground. When we meet the enemy, we will rip their skulls from their spines and toss them away laughing. Am I right, Marines?
Sir, yes, sir!
Damn right I am. Now move it out! Double time!
Attention all personnel.
So Halo takes place in the far future where humanity has been at war with this alien empire called the Covenant for God knows how long. The game opens with this large military ship called the Pillar of Autumn detecting a large ring-like structure in space. Unfortunately, they're being chased by the Covenant who manages to onboard the ship, but unfortunately for the Covenant, this just so happens to be the resting place of Master Chief, aka John 117, one of the last original Spartan super soldiers left, although in this game, we don't really know all that yet. Assisted by his AI companion Cortana, Chief is tasked by Captain Keyes here to escape the ship with Cortana and the mysterious ring-like structure. We come to learn that this ring-like structure is called Halo, and for the rest of the game, Master Chief along with other Marines battle their way through it to uncover its dark secrets and find out why the Covenant's so interested in it. Would you believe me if I told you these were top-notch graphics? Yeah, we've come a long way, but I don't think this game looks too bad on the eyes compared to others of its time. I am cheating a bit playing the remastered version where the resolution has been cleaned up for modern screens, but even the original version, you could do a lot worse. Nah, even during its time, Halo was only solid graphically, but it didn't matter because the presentation and all other aspects was strong as hell. You already knew you were getting into something different just by the opening menu. Most action games at the time welcomed you with high-tempo music to match what the gameplay is like. Understandable as you don't want to give a false impression, but not Halo. Instead, we're greeted to the most ominous sounding Gregorian chants put to a game with a slow pan of the world you'll be exploring. Instantly one of the most iconic main menus ever. Mesmerizing and haunting. This feels like a grand place you want to explore, but you might be afraid of what you'll find. It doesn't tell you how the game plays, but it definitely taps into the mysterious vibes of the world and story. Across the board, the music slaps. It's not just the main menu. The game in general leans into the orchestra for its big moments, and man, it has you feeling like this. Just walking through a hallway with Master Chief's theme playing felt like the most heroic power walk ever. But it's not all triumphant. Most of the levels in this game have you exploring dark, unknown environments, so a lot of the time the backing tracks reflect that with either no music or these somber, tribal sounding trip-hop tracks.
Detected up ahead. The path up on the left should let us sneak up around them.
Keep it up!
Unsurprisingly, this game does look its best when everything is covered in darkness and is indoors, but it doesn't look half bad in the light either. I always liked how no matter where you were outside, you could see the halo ring curving in the distance. Probably saved the environmental artist the headache of creating whole new backgrounds, but more than that, it does showcase the grand scale of the world you're on. Halo's a linear game, but unlike many of its contemporaries up until that point, the levels were pretty damn spacious in many parts, wide as hell with lots of verticality. Obviously, this was done to make way for the use of vehicles, but it's still pretty impressive. What's even more impressive is how vehicles in this game works. This is pre-Havoc engine, yet the vehicles in this game move in a heavy ragdoll way that feels completely natural. Yet another thing where this game wasn't the first to do it, but definitely made it feel the best up until that point. We take it for granted now, but just the fact that you're able to enter and exit a vehicle at any time without the game shitting itself was some wizard magic around these times. Can understand why some sacrifices needed to be made graphically, but some good art still has this game looking good. What brings it all together are the memorable character designs. The Covenant have got to be up there as one of the most memorable alien factions in games, and I think a lot of it has to do with their distinct designs and personality. Everything from their weapons, vehicles, armor, and architecture are in contrast to the UNSC. While the UNSC have a bulkier look to their equipment with a lot of green and black, the Covenant rock a lot of colder colors with their equipment looking sleek and curvy. It looks alien and it feels alien, but even without the comparisons to the Marines, they look unique. The Covenant aren't a homogenous group. They're a collection of multiple races under one banner. You got the elites who are these warrior eel men, the grunts who are these scared little gremlins, the jackals who are these odd looking troll things, and the hunters who are these big intimidating armored guys. I like how you can tell what the pecking order is just by fighting them, but I'll go more into that when I talk about the gameplay. Overall, the atmosphere in this game was something else, which is why I was a little disappointed with the remaster. Don't get me wrong, being able to switch to more modernized graphics at any point is super dope, and the daytime levels in particular look great with better lighting and added detail to the character models and environments. But man, they completely fucked up the atmosphere when it came to levels like the library and 343 Guilty Spark. These are the levels where you're supposed to be unnerved a bit as you're lost in an abandoned facility surrounded by this parasitic horde called the Flood. The original heightened the tension by using sparse lighting and dark gray homogeneous walls that feel oppressive. The remaster said fuck all this, let's add lights everywhere and make everything vibrant. Sure, technically it looks better, but I don't feel anything when I'm in here. So I've been going on and on about how Halo was unique for its time due to its aesthetics, but what about the shit that matters the most? You know, the actual game part of it. Well, transport yourself back to 2001. The most comfortable shooting game on a controller up until that point was GoldenEye in the Nintendo 64. No disrespect to that game, but it doesn't take too long blasting through Covenant here to notice that this feels way better than that shit. 2 analog sticks allowed for better movement, and the auto aim is tweaked just enough to where you're being assisted, but it isn't obvious. This, along with the widespread of many of the guns, along with the wider than usual enemy models, has the shooting in this game feeling smooth as butter on a controller. With that being said, I still played this game with a mouse and keyboard. Listen man, it's a first-person shooter at the end of the day, and that setup will always reign supreme for the genre. But nah, smooth controls are one thing. The real meat and potatoes are battles with the Covenant. And yeah, they already found the secret sauce when it came to the gameplay loop here. Shootouts against these guys is thrilling from beginning to end. What makes Halo's combat fun is threefold. All the weapons you can use are mad useful, the Covenant forces feel like real threats, and there's a healthy amount of chaos that keeps things both flashy and low-key funny. On the first point, your weapons are on the smaller side, especially compared to the later games, but the weapons you do got here all have a specific purpose, and they're all satisfying to use in that purpose. You have your assault rifle here, which has this wide rapid fire that's really good at taking out groups of low health enemies. The shotgun one-taps the flood who like to charge at you. The sniper is self-explanatory. The rocket launcher decimates vehicles and whole groups cluttered together. And the pistol, blessed by God himself and dropped from the heavens, this thing murks everything. It don't matter if an enemy's far away or up close. Landing headshots with this, 1 taps most things and 3 taps everything. This thing was a goddamn nightmare in multiplayer. I remember being in games where motherfuckers just used this and it was a headshot fest. Can see why it was toned down a bit for the sequels, but it's still funny as shit. The pistol is the best weapon in the game, and it's not just the best weapon in this game. This is like the greatest pistol in any game ever. But back to the weapon talk, that was just the human weapons I named. You got the Covenant weapons, which feel mad different from the Marine weapons in that they overheat and don't have to reload. They're pretty standard laser guns you would see in any other sci-fi game. The creative standout here is the Needler, which shoots needles that not only track what you're shooting at, but explodes after hitting them. Terrible in PvP, but probably one of the most useful weapons on Legendary next to the pistol. All of these useful weapons is the reason why Halo limiting you to just 2 of them actually makes the combat more exciting. You're encouraged to try out everything and switch up how you fight mid-fight by changing weapons. Has many of the fights feeling different, which keeps things fresh. There's also some thinking involved in that you actually have to think about the 2 weapon combinations you want to bring to your next fight, since every weapon outside of the pistol is only good against certain types of encounters. But cool weapons aside, what really keeps the firefights feeling dynamic are the enemies you face. Remember how I said that the Covenant have a lot of personality? Well, they all express that in how they fight you. The grunts are the most common enemy type and they're weak as hell. They know it too, because if you start mowing too many of them down or kill an elite by them, they start freaking out, which makes you feel like the real monster. Jackals are the second most common enemy type, and these guys aren't as pussy, but that's only because they have shields. The elites is where the AI truly shines. These guys are swift as hell. They're always moving, dodging gunshots, strafe shooting, and ducking out of the way of any explosives. They're shielded as hell too, which makes them the greatest threat on the field outside of hunters who are practically walking tanks. There's a good synergy between all of the different enemy types that maintains a fair but formidable challenge. I also like how these guys actually have a sense of self-preservation. Enemies will actually retreat and hide if they're at a disadvantage, and duck out of the way if they're about to get blown up or ran over. Sounds like a small thing, but this actually does a lot of making these guys feel like real beings that you're fighting. And the firefights themselves can be mad chaotic. Halo is generous with the grenades it provides, and it's hard not to spam them out when guys are bunched together. It's just funny as shit watching dudes fly yards away after sticking them, and the fact that explosives detonate other grenades lying on the ground is good attention to detail. Halo is not only the game that popularized health regeneration in shooters, it's also one of the few games where it actually makes sense diegetically. The Chief isn't regenerating, his suit is. Way too often in other shooters, it makes no damn sense. You have some average ass soldier getting shot up and then regenerating like Wolverine after hiding behind cover for like 5 seconds. I understand why developers fell in love with this. The player doesn't have to waste time searching for health packs and they remain in the action. It's just that Halo went through the effort of including it to not only keep the action steady, but make sense within its world. All of these fun mechanics do converge to make the gameplay loop overall fun throughout, but the pacing definitely could have been better. In the beginning, it's fine. It's here where the rise in difficulty is gradual, and the game knows what to throw you into different scenarios subtly. The game gets you familiar with the shooting mechanics with the traditional narrow corridors in the first level, and then in the second level, it gets you familiar with its vehicle mechanics in this wide open space. The third stage has you sniping guys from out of combat, and then the fourth stage is a mix of all the stages up until that point, but with more enemies. The problem arises on the fifth stage. It's here where I think they were running out of time with the level design, because it's here where the game starts to repeat a bunch of shit. Here you have to go through very similar looking rooms and hallways, fighting the same enemies 3 times over. And not only that, the game has the audacity to have you do all this shit over again for the 8th stage. But nah, the real drag is the 7th stage, the library. It's here where you have to follow Guilty Spark to get to the index chamber while constantly getting jumped by the flood. And to be blunt, it sucks ass. Way too many samey hallways that you're going down, and having to wait for Guilty Spark to open some of these doors is a drag. Even the flood starts to lose its novelty. They're not exactly the most interesting enemies to fight. They're just a mindless horde that swarms you. There's not much to them compared to the Covenant, and having the longest levels in the game dedicated to them, yeah, I don't think that was the move. It's a shame too, because the build up to the flood was done well. All the bodies and blood on the floor, this guy freaking out, the videotape showing what happened. The game almost turned horror for a sec with all the suspense. Definitely worked on leaving a mark, because to this day people talk about how this part scared the crap out of them as a kid. Unfortunately, it can't hit the same now, as everyone knows about the flood now.
Captain Keyes.
Good to see you, Master Chief. Things aren't going well. Cortana did her best, but we never really had a chance.
A dozen Covenant superior battleships against a single Halcyon-class cruiser. With those odds, I'm content with 3, make that 4 kills. Sleep well?
No thanks to your driving, yes.
So you did miss me.
It wasn't just the gameplay where Halo was ahead of its time. Nah, for a pure shooting game without any immersive sim elements, this game was pretty damn cinematic. Already went over the music, which heightens the presentation, but the voice acting was really solid too. Great casting all around for the main characters. The voice performances and writing really brings all of them to life. It's to the point where I think the presentation did a lot of the heavy lifting in getting people to like it, because the narrative on its own is just okay. Standard hero shit where Master Chief saves the galaxy doing cool shit. At this point in the series, the Covenant doesn't really have any layers to them, and Chief and Cortana's relationship is mostly just light banter you would see from like a jock and a nerd. It's entertaining, but it is a bit weird coming from the later games where the tone is always super serious. There's noticeably a bit more moments of levity, especially with Cortana here. Something I never understood is why she didn't just tell the Chief what was happening in this scene. She discovers that the ring is supposed to kill the flood and anything on it, but instead of just telling the Chief here, she yells at him to go save Keyes, blindly leaving him to discover all of that shit for himself. Also, this motherfucker could teleport anywhere on the ring this whole time using the suit's power, and she didn't think to tell him that until the very end? Yeah, it's clear that Bungie were writing these levels around what they already made. The execution is a bit sloppy at points, but you can still do a lot worse. It is meant to be just the first third in a 3-part saga.
Chief, up ahead there's a gap in the trench. At top speed, we should be able to clear it.
So yeah, that's Halo Combat Evolved, the start of one of gaming's greatest trilogies and one of Microsoft's biggest moneymakers in the gaming division. This game is aged like fine wine, yo. It's still a blast to play through today. This is one of those games where you boot it up and you immediately know why motherfuckers were so geeked about it back then. This game's a classic, incredibly well designed, the shooting still holds up, the narrative is interesting, and the vibes are cool as hell. 2 thumbs up from me, and I would still recommend it to anyone that hasn't played it today. But anyway, that's all I gotta say about this. Obviously do the usual things to help this video out in the algorithm. If this video does well, then videos on the sequels are definitely on the table. But until then, I'll see y'all next time.